Yeah, good morning, everyone. Let me start with one little screen share here.
And while Andrew's queuing that up, we're gonna show a little quick video that welcomes the team.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew, working out of Sausalito, California.
Hey, everyone. I'm Sander, and I work remotely from Reno, Nevada.
Hey, I'm Carson.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Ignacio.
My name is Aaron.
I'm Bruno.
Hey everyone, I'm Marla Natoli.
I'm Alan.
Hey, I'm Joe.
I'm Dan.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Brian Hofstein. Welcome to Tableland.
I believe Tableland, by building a permissionless, socially owned database layer for the web, has the ability to power entirely new products and economies on data.
For the community, this means more focus on ideas and creativity, less on tools and infrastructure. Tableland is on its way to become the first truly easy to use and permissionless database for developers.
I can't wait to meet you all.
I hope you enjoy Convergence, and we'll see you on the internet.
Cool.
Thank you for that quick step in there. But yeah, so with that, I want to welcome you all to our first ever Convergence. I'm going to steal the screen share from 80 here. I'm really excited to do this with all of you. It's such an exciting day for us, and I'll kind of get into why that is and some of the ways that we're thinking now. But yeah, thank you for taking your morning or your afternoon or your evening to just jump in here for some time with us and talking through some exciting things. We're going to have, both a couple more talks and some breakouts, plus some special sessions for rig owners. And I just want to remind everybody that we're really committed to making our community a really open and fun and welcoming place. So let's keep the conversations really positive today and be respectful and considerate and kind to one another. And we're happy to give you the mic and ask people for feedback and share your ideas along the way. With that, I really want to start by welcoming, and thanking some of the particular groups that I know showed up this morning. So first of all, the rig owners, I know we have some special sessions for all of you later today, and hopefully we'll be able to get talking with all of you and getting some of your feedback. But I know many of you already are showing up every morning in our Discord and have been providing us so much good, positive feedback and encouragement. And I'm just so thrilled to have you all on this journey with us. Second group I know is here are the node operators. And so we've taken the first step towards decentralizing the protocol just a month ago by onboarding the first teams running external nodes of the validator. And they've been really awesome. You can actually check in on the chat with them on Discord and kind of follow along their progress. We'll be broadening this up, but their feedback has been tremendous. And so thank you, and thank you for coming today. And then, of course, all our partners and collaborators. And there were just too many to list on any of these slides, actually. So I listed a few here, but just so many folks have been collaborating with us, not just on Tableland, but for years of our work, and many new ones showing up now that Tableland is out, and we just really wouldn't be able to do it without them. And so, yeah, thank you for coming again and again and again. And we really appreciate it. And we really hope that we can support you in all the things that you're building and doing too. And so with all those groups, I think being here for Tableland, it really blows my mind. And I was reflecting on this with the team last week, that Tableland didn't really exist 4 months ago. As an organization, we organize in seasons. So 3-4 month planning sessions. We're just wrapping up our last season that was about 3.5 months long. We started the season with a validator, nothing else. And so many other things came into existence. In fact, over the weekend, we tweeted that it was our 2-month birthday on a mainnet. So 2 months that we've really been available on a mainnet. But kind of reflecting even more deeply the things that have passed in the last 4 months. And I could just sample from the top of my head a dozen really big things that landed in 4 months. And that sort of progress and speed has been so exciting to work with. And I can't say enough about the team that's building Tableland and all their talents and how much they show up every day to really push this thing forward. And that's been really complemented by the community showing up. And so we just launched Pilot Program 2, which we'll be spending a bit of today talking about. And for the applications for the pilot program, we had 40 awesome applications, projects that were trying to be part of this, core group of builders and be part of the collaboration. We have 1,400 rig owners, and many of you are, like I said, coming day in and day out to our Discord. In September alone, we had 15,000 on-chain transactions with our protocol. So these are the transactions that are creating tables or updating data. We had 1,700 tables created on the network. And so that was really, really cool to see. And I think we can grow it month over month now. And like I said, we have 10 nodes running on the network, which is really exciting and obviously only more to add now. But really, that was such a great step for us. And I'm just blown away by how quickly we got there. So what comes next for Tableland, right? That's a lot of what today is about and thinking about the future. Today's event is pretty small, right? It's a small budget event. We have a pretty small agenda. It's only half a day. And we're going to have some small discussions with little breakout groups, just talking about some specific things around pilot program and rigs and all of that. But really, it's a huge moment for us. So like I said, we're just wrapping up our last season and we're moving to our next season's planning week, which is sort of like we have a creative week this week, followed by structured planning next week. And it also really represents this shift in our phase of thinking, where last season was all about setting up the technology foundations. It was really the 0 to 1 of technology. Just make the network work, make the protocol work, make the products work. And now we need to make them work for users. We need to really push the gas on the network growth and bringing on new adoption and new use cases. And that really excites me. And I think we're in such a good place to do it. And that's a lot of what I'm going to share with you now. The path that we're moving on in our plans is sort of obvious. The path before us is just there, right? We have a few really big pieces that we need to move through in order to get Tableland from its early protocol state today to being a protocol that runs as a mainnet with a token incentivized system. And that's really exciting to me, because with the path so clear, it gives us space to really think about what are the exciting things that we need to build around the edges? What are the things that our users need? And what are the different ways that we can integrate this with other protocols and ecosystems that aren't necessarily documented right here? There's just so much more. And so I wanted to give a sample. I've been thinking a lot of ways that you as the community and ecosystem could be contributing already. And there's so much more than just technology. Obviously, with Pilot Program and our support of hackathons and our developer channels, we try a lot to support developers building things, and that will never stop. We're going to keep doing that. But if you are a technologist, or maybe you are a technologist, but you're thinking how Web3 is coming together and how you can support projects like Tableland, I'm going to talk about why you might want to support us in a second. But if you're thinking about how you can support us, I think there's some really big ideas that now that we've gone through that sort of setting up the technology foundations, it's possible. We can build a lot more than technology today. And so just a few ideas from the top of my head as I was putting the slides together are tugs, Tableland user groups. I think user groups are a really interesting concept in Web 2, where you look at really a lot of the great Web 2 technologies have set up user groups around the world, right? There are user groups in cities where people come together, but we're Web 3, we don't really operate at the city level the same way. And I started thinking, why can't we think of user groups in networked communities? So why not take Tableland user groups and make thematic user groups within other communities? And that's something I'd love to see emerge and support. So user groups in Developer DAO or in Radius, where people focus on the areas of Tableland that really support their work and help them push further. And we can just give you resources. And maybe it's running your own micro hackathons, or maybe it's just getting together at conferences or giving talks or workshops or whatever it is. The other area I'm really excited now that we have the technology, we have use cases coming online, is to really push what's happening with standards. So the Ethereum wizards, for example, have a standards working group. And I think now is the time that we can, as a community, as you as contributors and us as core team, we can all start pushing out and collaborating with those organizations and saying, what's next for the standards of NFTs? How do we push the standards forward in ways that weren't possible 6 months ago? And by doing so, we can really push what's possible with dynamic NFTs and executable NFTs and many more things. Another area that I'm surprised people aren't talking about more are the power is sort of the power of data summoners. And so summoners here, I mean the same thing as summoners in DAOs. So if you've followed the work of summoners in DAOs, for example, it's the idea of setting up templated, very sort of intricate templated systems where somebody can come along and summon a new DAO with just a few clicks and some configurations. Juicebox is a good example of a DAO summoner. I think data summoners are a huge opportunity now with a technology like Tableland, where you, as sort of a data scientist or a technologist, can actually think of ways that you can help organizations sort of onboard and curate and clean and improve data sets and push them to Tableland in ways that they couldn't do necessarily on their own, and doing it in such a way that adds value to the flow that you could actually be incentivized to do it. And maybe there are some cases, like maybe the incentives are pretty small. Maybe you're earning only a little bit when people are summoning new data sets to Tableland. But if you do it for really valuable and broad data sets, so thinking about the number of Excel spreadsheets that exist in the universe, and thinking about creating data summoners that can get lots of that data into the public good, you could actually think of actually funding pretty big projects with earning models built around data summoners. And I think that's a really cool area now that we have on-chain protocols for data like Tableland. And then a whole bucket of things like bots and gatekeepers and dashboards, and really automation. Really, how do we take the data that's going into Tableland and make it flow into other protocols, flow it into other communities and discords and all the places that data can now be connected and really snowballed into bigger things. And so I just wanted to plant those as sort of small ideas for you, because and as a segue to talking about some bigger ideas. Actually, I don't know if big ideas is the right way to call these. These are neither big nor necessarily important. They're just 3 ideas I wanted to throw out there and get you thinking as we're going into this day and going into the next season and going into this next phase of Tableland altogether. And maybe pair these ideas with your morning coffee or your afternoon tea and just think about them. And then maybe they'll shade your conversations later today. Idea 1 is hyperstructures. I shared this link in our Discord the other day. I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks. And I think it's a really interesting construct, and one that we're well suited to help fill. So if you go to jacob.energy, Jacob wrote about, so Jacob works at Zora, and he wrote about this concept of hyperstructures, saying basically crypto protocols open up this new way to think about building public infrastructure and these specific properties of the way we build that public infrastructure that create these hyperstructures that are incredibly valuable, but have these properties that make them so they might last for a very, very long time. And I actually think that Tableland is the beginning of a new Web3 hyperstructure. And I think there are like 7 properties. So it's unstoppable, free, valuable, expansive, permissionless, positive sum, incredibly neutral. And I think we're starting to check each of those boxes as we push this protocol out and get the token launched and build the network. But just to call out a few that are already in place, are really unstoppable, permissionless, and positive sum. There's no reason that Tableland ever has to stop. Again, positive sum around data, I think, is so exciting. The more data that you're bringing to Tableland, open data in particular, the more people can build on it in the future. This is a really open protocol that allows composable data in a way that Web3 is spoken about for years, but hasn't really been realized at the network level, because data is often obfuscated, sort of difficult to use when it's locked only in this data smart contracts. But in Tableland, with a really relational data set based network, we can really think of data as positive sum stored in a permissionless network where anyone's allowed to use it. It's incredibly neutral. Anybody can use our smart contracts and leverage the Tableland protocol, and it will be unstoppable, especially when we back it by a token. Idea 2 is maybe obvious at a high level, but I think becomes really interesting if we try to draw some analogies. But I think Tableland is the missing layer of the Web3 developer stack. There's going to be sort of, people will start picking this apart as we go forward. But if you think about the way that people are building applications today and what's available to them, I think Tableland is missing or is filling a huge hole that was missing before. So in Web 2, I think there's this really interesting thing that has happened just in the last few years. So like 10 years ago, there were obviously a lot of databases for people to build applications on. But in the last 2 years, the architecture of the database services has really coalesced around the idea of app platforms. So the database is actually just a component of an app platform. And Supabase, PlanetScale, and Cloudflare D1 are all good examples of that. And what they mean when they are talking about being an app platform is that they're more than just a database. So here, pulling from the Supabase documentation, you can see that they have kind of 4 big buckets of features that they give their users: database, authentication, storage, and edge functions. And then I kind of use that as a filter to look at Tableland and figure out where it is, and it's pretty obvious, right? But what's really cool is that in Web3, we don't build that way. We don't build these monoliths, right? We build interoperable protocols that all work together in order to deliver a whole set of functions. And when you look at what Web3 has been building so far, these latter 3 categories are getting really, really good. So authentication, MetaMask for your signatures, Gnosis for multisig, ENS for profiles, or Lens for social profiles, all just good examples of the way authentication and identity is starting to work, let alone layers on top of that, like sign in with Ethereum, that even make it easier to use in an application. Storage, obviously, there's a lot of projects that are working on storage, but some that are really used all over the place, like IPFS, and some that are moving so fast in their technology that we know that these things are going to actually serve the need of all of Web3 and potentially a lot more very soon. And edge functions, obviously, Solidity smart contracts are the classic edge function. And there's performance and implications of what they mean by an edge function, but I think the analogy is fairly close. And that obviously leaves the whole of the database, and there just aren't that many projects working on performant, easy to use databases that are really interoperable with these other protocols. And that's where Tableland just lands for me. And it gets really exciting to think about it that way and think about how we actually make sure that we work with these other protocols in easy to use and exciting ways, that you put them all together and you can build applications like you've never built them before in Web3. And to do that, we're really solving the unsolved, right? It's like dynamic data has been a problem in Web3 for a long time. Like, how do you change a piece of data after you've put it into a smart contract or referenced it in a smart contract? Rich query languages, you really only see them in centralized gateways, and data ownership is really a tricky thing when people are putting data on centralized, databases or file storage systems. And if you look at our documentation and a lot of the way that we talk about Tableland, we focus so much on NFTs, and that's because we think NFTs are the gateway to so many of the applications that we want to build. But put in this lens of sort of the app platform, the Web3 app platform with all of these protocols together, we're talking about building a database that's web scale. And it's because we want to solve many, many things beyond NFTs. And we actually think many of these things will come to NFTs. The ideas of digital ownership when you're talking about digital data make a lot of sense. And so NFTs just sort of is the umbrella today for digital ownership, but there's so much more. So Tableland solves so many things. We've been talking about it as an unopinionated database layer. We're opinionated in our documentation and our tutorials. We talk about NFTs. That's where we want to focus today. But the technology is unopinionated, and it can solve many, many things beyond NFTs. And then my last idea I want to leave with you are some safe bets for how we can think about what's going to happen in the near future. And so we've been working, our team has been working in Web3 since 2018. We've built a lot of different technologies, and we've always been trying to build the pieces around how you use data, how you work with data in Web3. And developers have always struggled with data in Web3, struggled with how to store it, how to mutate it, how to integrate it. And that's something we've been watching and always trying to pick how do we solve that? Like, what are the different ways we solve that? And in 2020, 2021, we saw this rapid growth of NFTs. And what we saw is actually most developers working on NFTs were sidestepping the challenges of data. They were sidestepping the challenges of how do you host data. So I would wager that the vast majority of NFTs today rely on somebody's credit card to actually make that NFT work, because they have to host data for it. And so they were sidestepping the challenges of where they put data. They're also sidestepping the challenges of how do they build dynamic things with that data by just not doing it. Like, if you look at most of the NFTs that were built at that time, they were incredibly static. They were released and done. And then anything built around them was very outside of the original data. And then 21, 22, we see that developers started shifting what they were thinking about building. Like the PFP and art craze had peaked, right? And developers knew how many more times could you build that same thing, and the Solidity contracts were solved, and there were platforms that would do it for you. So developers were really digging into what would be next. And we saw so many things come online, so many experiments come online around on-chain games, play-to-earn models, social networks, ticketing, metaverse, reputation. We saw a lot of experiments over this time period, and many of them are still running. So we don't know if the experiments will be successful or not. But a lot of the ideas are being explored there, and in that exploration, we see this incredible need to solve dynamism and collaboration and synchronization and query and composition in a Web3 native way, without just hosting a database on some server. And so my first safe bet is that in 2023, we're going to see massive NFT innovation. All those experiments that we saw over the last year and a half have now sort of been fermenting long enough that the next year of innovations are going to be incredible. We see the ideas of DNFTs and executable NFTs really emerging, and thinking about how we support them with standards, and how we build real applications on top of them, and what are all the other technologies that you need to build them. And Tableland is there to really help lead that. And what I think is really interesting about this is, if that is true, if this innovation is going to happen, some of the platforms that have enabled NFTs to become as popular as they are going to be left in the dust if they aren't able to support the new wave of what's happening in NFTs. Or we're going to see a bifurcation of what it means to be an NFT. We're going to have all the static NFTs in those. We're going to see everything else. But I think it's a safe bet to say we're going to see massive innovation. But I also think it's a really pretty safe bet to say we're going to see massive NFT adoption. And I know that people watching kind of NFT floor prices and things like that might be skeptical of this, but I think it's a very safe bet. And I like to think about this in terms of I like to think about this in the way that something that Jeff Bezos talked about one time. And he said something like, when people compliment me on great quarterly results, he says, okay, that's really nice. But in the back of my mind, I think, oh yeah, except for those quarterly results were baked 3 years ago. And what I'm thinking about, what I'm working on, are the quarterly results in 2-3 years from now. And so what you hear today isn't what really is where people are focused. And I think the same thing can be said around something like NFT adoption. The success of NFTs next year is fully baked in what we see the trends and patterns of 2023. And what we saw in 2023 in 2022 are huge brands coming to the space and making pretty significant bets that NFTs can actually give them new capabilities and new things to release to their users. And it's not just brands, it's like brands and artists and athletes and all the people that are going to make NFTs become more of a consumer concept. And that means that sort of us as technology and technologists, we need to be there and really push them in the right directions. What's possible with digital ownership? How do we want to build it? How do we want to do it in a Web3 native way, so that Web3 doesn't just become a thin skin on top of Web2? But I think we're going to see massive adoption in NFT, and sort of our community needs to be ready for that, and really stewarding it in the right directions. And so that's to leave you with the last idea, which is that every single one of them needs Tableland. And they need it because they need to be able to give users better use cases than static images. They need cheaper ways to handle dynamic data. And they're going to need ways to be interoperable, so that NFTs that you're creating on one platform can be used in any marketplace or wallet or any place that you imagine it. And we need to reach them. Web3 is a little bit at risk here of going very Web2 if data is being centralized and these systems are closed in any sort of way. So how do we reach them? How do we onboard them? And that's where we're looking to all of you for help. So rig owners, developers, strategists, designers, thinkers, writers, all of you, we need your help in thinking about how we craft this, how we message it, and how we get it to them. And that's really our mission this season. That's the phase that we're going into. And with that, I want to kick off Convergence 22. So welcome.